Today I'm going to talk about big picture of NetApp. I'm going to start with a lot of cloudy stuff, which doesn't sound so storagey, except it turns out storage is a cloud thing too. And we think it matters a lot in the cloud also. And so I'm going to spend enough time talking about storage in the cloud that you'll start wondering, does NetApp even care about storage on-prem? And the answer is yes, a lot. And then I'll talk a little bit about that, and then we'll do Q&A. And then we'll get some actual people who know stuff to talk, as opposed to people with big picture. So I'd like to start by talking about the phrase cloud first, because we get a lot of customers who say cloud first, and it means radically different people depending who you talk to. If you talk to the business unit manager of our cloud organization, Anthony Lai, what he thinks cloud first means is everything else is doomed and it's going away and it will probably happen pretty fast. That's like that's who you would want to hire to run your cloud stuff. He's at one far end of the spectrum. There's still in the world a handful of cloud deniers, but not so many anymore. And I think a lot of us are somewhere in the middle. Cloud is awesome, but on-prem's not going anywhere anytime soon. I've had a chance to talk to a lot of customers about what cloud first means, and I just want to share the story of one because it was kind of an interesting, like, how do you get your head around this? And they were a shoe company, and they came here, in fact. It was one of the early folks into the new Data Visionary Center, and they had written on their thing, or actually the sales guys fill out when customers come in, they put in information and said, this is a cloud first customer. So I asked him, what does cloud first mean? And what the guy said was, I'll talk about that later. What I want to tell you about is my business model. Let me just tell you the journey that got him to what felt like cloud first. They, sports apparel company, I won't say which one, but they realized that they were doomed 5, 6 years ago. And they were doomed because everybody goes to the mall to buy sports apparel shoes. They didn't have any direct channel, but nobody goes to the mall anymore. They all want to buy through the internet. And they didn't trust any of the internet distributors to distribute their shoes as opposed to somebody else's shoes, right? So they wanted a direct connection. So they built smartphone apps, iPhone app, Android app. They built web pages. They did all of this stuff, converted not all of their business, but a big chunk of their business. And they did all of it with on-prem computing technology. And here's what it looked like, because, I mean, you guys know this, right? It's retail. So average around the year, about 8,000, 9,000 interactions per minute. Certain days of the year, 500,000 interactions per minute. 500. And they did it all on-prem, and of course it was horribly inefficient, and they said, I bet we could save a bunch of money if we went, in their case, to Amazon. So they did. I'm going to talk more later about why people choose to do this. People don't generally go to the cloud to save money. That was like the early idea, and it usually doesn't work out that way. This is an unusual case that it worked out that way. But that wasn't his problem yet. All of it worked great. They moved everything to the cloud. It was cheaper. They were happy. What he said then was his cloud-first problem was he said, my single most important app in the entire company, the app that collects our money from our customers, is almost the only thing we have in the cloud. So none of my people are trained up on it. I mean, a teeny handful of them. So my goal now is any new thing I do, I want to put it in the cloud just entirely so that I've got more stuff in the cloud so that people have more experience in the cloud, so that when the important app breaks, hopefully someone will have spotted that bug first in a different app, right? So the reason I'm telling that story is partly just because people's paths to the cloud are so different, why they would end up there, what they're doing. There's lots of reasons. Later I'll tell you what I see as the most common one. The US government created a cloud-first policy, and their cloud-first policy didn't say you had to go to the cloud. Actually, it was very interesting. All it said was every new IT project, they must scope out a cloud solution. Having scoped out a cloud solution, like a realistic cloud solution, one that would work, one that was secure, like there were some constraints on it, having scoped out a cloud solution, they can do whatever they want. They were just trying to get the idea of it out. And I really liked what that did, because I think when you're thinking about the cloud, there's two big questions that you should always ask. And the first of them is, could it go in the cloud? And there's some stuff that just like, it couldn't. I was talking to a printing press company, And they're going to print that newspaper between whatever it is, 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. in the morning, and they're going to print it whether there's no internet or whether there's no power or whether there's nothing about cloud that makes them comfortable or happy. They're going to have computers sitting next to the printing press with no internet connection, but local Ethernet, their own power. So no, cloud won't work. Or it's a mainframe COBOL program. You could rewrite it, but no, it's not. That's not going to run in the cloud. Yet I've heard people talking about simulators. So some stuff just can't run in the cloud. So could it run in the cloud? The second question is, should it run in the cloud? And what I like about breaking these questions apart is they're radically different. The first one is technical and nerdy. Like, what's the response time and how fast is it? What are the power requirements? When could it go down? That's the first. The second one, the should it question, is really a corporate strategy question. What are our competitors doing? Why would we put it in the cloud? Is our goal to save money or move faster, or our competitors are doing it, or legally it's better or worse? Or it's a very different. So teasing those two apart and asking them separately feels good to me. I did have notes here. I think people use the word cloud first. When I think about cloud first, just because you start by asking that question doesn't mean that the answer should be you end up in the cloud. So I want to talk a little bit more about cloud before I get to the pivot point where I'm talking more generally about NetApp's business. What I would like to talk about is the second generation of NetApp's cloud storage. And we've had a variety of products and different release numbers, but this is a fundamentally second generation. The first one is Cloud ONTAP. How many people have fired up ONTAP running in Amazon or Azure or something? When we built that, we were really proud of it. So it's ONTAP. And it was a lot of work to get it to work, first in Amazon, getting the NVRAM to work and getting the access to the disk subsystem that we needed and having dual ported for redundancy, so we worked very closely with Amazon, and we've now also done it with Azure and Google. And it's a cool product, especially for anybody with ONTAP on-prem who wants to extend their data management hooks into the cloud. When we hired Anthony, our cloud business unit guy, he kindly explained that we were idiots and that it didn't smell like cloud. And, naturally, I was offended because it's ONTAP. It's awesome. It's my baby. But he said, what this feels like is a product for storage administrators, because it is a product for storage administrators. And he said cloudy people in the cloud don't want to be storage administrators. In fact, they would just assume no storage administrators existed. And certainly, to the extent that some have to exist, they don't want to talk to them. Right? And so,
true.
I mean, you guys know these people, right? Are any of you those people?
I would.
We've been there once or twice.
So that's version 1. Version 2, put up my picture. I printed out the interface to create, I wrote this down, small text, to create a volume in Azure. This is the JSON schema. Post that JSON to the Azure Resource Manager, and it will create a volume. The volume's name will be Dave Volume 03, creation token, usage. Doesn't actually say anywhere that it's a create. Somehow you just post it to the right place. I guess the URL that you post, I don't know. So I have a question. Until I told our cloud team I would like to actually do this myself, I want to type it in, I want to make a cloud volume, show me how, I had never looked at a Azure resource JSON schema. Have you guys all looked at this? Any of you haven't yet? You're all smarter than me, you haven't yet? Okay, dude, you and me. Two haven't? Oh, come on.
No,
Here's the thing. This smells cloudy. Right? You don't know anything. You don't know that there's ONTAP running somewhere. All you know is the Microsoft's Azure Resource Manager has a URL, and you can go post to the URL, and when you're done posting to the URL, it'll respond. This is the JSON you send. It'll respond with some JSON, and that'll have in it the mount point. Right? That's how much you need to know. That's cloudy. And so it's been very cool to me to watch, the starting point, which is Cloud ONTAP. The ONTAP, anyone who knows and loves ONTAP, this is the ONTAP you know and love. It's got all the features. You like SnapMirror, you like whatever you like. There's a few that are hard to implement in VMs and in other people's clouds, but for the most part, it is the same code. It's basically some drivers are different. For the people who want it, that's great. For the people who don't, then we have this. The cloud volumes. And what's been very fun about having both, whenever we have conversations about cloud volumes with cloud people, they have all sorts of questions that aren't mostly storage-y questions. How fast is it? How can I use it? What domains will it work in? Is there some security, something, encryption? Like some of that kind of stuff. Then when we talk to ONTAP people, they have an enormous number of, well, I'd like to do this, I'd like to do that, well, what about this feature, what about that feature? And the answer is no. And not only that, but no cloud person we've ever talked to has ever asked about that feature, so we're not putting it in, because it's for cloud people and it smells cloudy. And everything you said, and then they go, well, but I'd want this, well, then for you we have Cloud ONTAP. And it has all of the features. Well, I don't want to manage it. Well, one of the cool things that allows you not to manage it is that it's got so few options. It's like, well, if you don't want to manage it, then here's what it is. Like any color you want, as long as it's black, right? So there really is a very different feel to the cloud stuff. So there's the JSON schema. So cloud. I give talks, and I gave one in the other room over there that's like a theater-style room. I like the U better. And I talked about this stuff like I am now. And during the Q&A, one of the customers asked, so Dave, would you make a prediction? How long do you believe until NetApp stops selling on-prem gear? How fast can you shrink that, do you think? I will tell you. I told him, that is not our goal. It's not our goal to stop selling on-prem gear. In fact, we believe that having really good cloud solutions, both IT style, storage IT style, Cloud ONTAP, new cloud style, cloud volumes, we believe that having really, really good cloudy solutions will let us gain share in the on-prem business. Because people will say, everybody's having fights. Will this go into the cloud? Will this not go into the cloud? When will it go into the cloud? Maybe it'll come back from the cloud. Oh yeah, the majority of stuff that goes into the cloud comes back from the cloud. I heard from a guy named Michael Dell. I disagree completely with that, but who cares if I'm right or wrong? If I'm a customer trying to figure this stuff out, working with a company that strongly is committed to both would be a good company to work with, even for my on-prem stuff, because I don't know how long it'll be on-prem, or if it's in the cloud, it might want to come back. Wouldn't it be convenient if it was the same company that could help me work on this stuff? So what is the world that we predict? We predict 3 big styles that customers will think about. Style number 1, public cloud. Style number 2, private cloud, and I'll define that a little bit in a minute. And style number 3, enterprise IT. So public cloud's easy to spot because you're writing a check to Azure, Google, Amazon, like you wrote them a check. You know it's public cloud, so that's pretty straightforward. The difference between private cloud and enterprise IT is a shifting bar. 10 years ago, I would say, if you were running VMware, that qualified as a private cloud, right? Good enough. Look, it's virtual. It's a private cloud. Today, like most of enterprise IT runs on VMware or some kind of virtualization, so that's not nearly good enough. My definition today would be, if you have 100 nodes of something configured into some big cluster of something, and you can reconfigure that big cluster of something into, instead of one big node, you can configure it into one cluster with half the nodes, and 3 more clusters, 10 nodes, and another one, whatever that adds up to. Anyway, so there's 5 total. If you can do that without touching any cabling, to me that qualifies as a cloud. That implies it's what are the characteristics that private clouds typically have these days? very uniform, typically Ethernet to the top of the rack, lots of boxes that are, if not identical. There's lots of these ones have maybe graphics chips for AI. These ones don't have graphics chips. Maybe some of them are storage dense, some of them aren't. But they're a handful of flavors. That style, and both hyper-converged and converged systems tend to fall in this category, that you're just kind of, converged ones might not get it on that you can reconfigure them without touching cables. So there's sort of, there's always shades of gray. So to me, the interesting question, and I'm approaching done, so then we'll go into Q&A. The interesting question is, why do customers choose to deploy these different characteristics? And I started these different styles, the 3 different styles. I started by saying, the customer example I gave, they went to the public cloud and they saved lots of money. And it made sense that they did because of a super highly variable load. That is not the main reason I hear for people going to the public cloud. Early on, everybody thought they would, and then a lot of people went in, and then it turned out they didn't save money. Some did, some didn't, but it wasn't like that. The number one reason I hear that people say, I want to go to the public cloud, is innovation. They think they can innovate faster. And I believe they're right. I mean, let me define a crazy app. So you want to do a new app for the phone, and you want to take pictures of a person's face and then do a sentiment analysis on it and decide if they're happy or unhappy and figure out what demographic. Oh, look, it's a 30-year-old female, and she looks happy. And then that person talks to the phone, and you take the words and you do a sentiment analysis on the words, and you see if they match the face, and like, do we have a customer satisfaction problem or not? You want to do all of that stuff. I am telling you, the person who does it, the team that chooses the public cloud to do that in, will win every time. Right? I mean, just the tools that are available, the face recognizers, the voice recognizers, the speed that any of the 3 of the public clouds will beat whatever on-prem thing you try and put together. For just speed of getting a brand new thing implemented from scratch, public cloud's going to win. And there's other advantages too, but I just say when I talk to people, that is the number one reason to get started. For the private cloud, the number one answer that I hear on that is speed of deployment of new services, but they might not be innovative. You might just be installing some new system and you don't know what that new system is, but if you design a reasonably flexible private cloud, the odds are whatever software package you choose, it'll run on the cloud you've got, right? So building out a private cloud gives you the ability to pop stuff up, get going very, very quickly with whatever new stuff. Maybe it's innovative, maybe it's not innovative, maybe you just bought it, maybe you're just sort of approaching other people's best practices, but moving quickly. And then the final in enterprise IT, and let's just begin, so enterprise IT, Unix, Windows, Ethernet cables, fiber channel cables, like when you install something enterprise IT style, even if it's VMware, typically you're thinking about it. Like, boy, it's going to be a VMware for a pool of Oracle jobs, and given the load characteristics, maybe I'll use Fiber Channel instead of iSCSI, or I mean, maybe it's the load characteristics, or maybe it's how my existing staff is trained up, whatever. And then you design it like that. Oh, over here is where the VDI will go. Like all of those could be enterprise IT as opposed to private cloud. You kind of design chunks of stuff. That is where the bulk of most people's business is. Certainly a handful of old companies that have done serious retooling, that's not true. A lot of startups, that's not true. But for most companies of any scale and age, most of their budget's in that enterprise IT. And if they're going to spend money there, they have 2 goals. Goal number 1, get it flash, in the storage context. And goal number 2, connect it to the cloud. Maybe for, I don't trust primary in the cloud, but I'll trust backup in the cloud. So getting it upgraded to flash as much as possible, at least where it makes sense, and increasingly that's everywhere, and getting it connected to the cloud to take advantage of that where it makes sense. Those are the key things in that enterprise IT space. So here's what I believe. Whenever there's a new disruptive technology, there is an enormous amount of interesting innovation exactly in the space of that new thing. So the iPhone's coming out. Let's write iPhone apps, right? I mean, that's the obvious one. Oh, look, cloud is coming out. Let's go be cloudy. There's and that's a great way of innovating, right? I don't mean to diss that at all. There's another source of interesting innovation, which is to find the space between the old and the new, and to help people deal with the fact that they're going to have both for a long time. So to push on the iPhone analogy, yeah, I've got a calendar on my iPhone, but I still have a calendar on my desktop. Wouldn't it be nice if it worked across both and I could make an appointment here and I could see it there, right? That's where there's a second enormous zone of interesting innovation, and that is what NetApp is focused on for data management. It's not that we're ditching on-prem and believe cloud's going to take over. We think it's enormously important and going to be a big opportunity for us, but what we think the real source of innovation is not just to do cloud-only solutions, but to have it linked back to on-prem and back to private clouds and have all of these be able to work together in a way that would be very difficult if you just said, well, never mind that old stuff, that's no good. We're just the cloud guys. We think there's much more interesting opportunity the way we're doing it. So that's what we're trying to do with customers for the most part, not tell customers you should be in the cloud or you shouldn't be in the cloud or what took you so long to get to the cloud like that. We don't care. I mean, we might have some advice based on what we've seen, but for the most part, whatever they've chosen, we'd like to talk about how to get them to the place they're trying to get to with respect to their data management. Service level premium, because I'm worth it. Any questions? I didn't talk about any bits or bytes or storage media or hardly anything. I'm sorry. I think that's what Emeritus means.
Historically, Dave, there's been a lot of technology innovation. When new technology comes out, old technology also gets innovated to try to, remove that advantage of the new technology. You see a lot of innovation in what I'll call on-prem storage coming out. I mean, obviously, Flash, NVMe over Fabric, those sorts of things, but...
Flash and NVMe over Fabric don't seem to me to be in response to cloud. I mean, yeah, we needed faster, better media. I would say one of the things that cloud does enormously well is simplicity. Just deploy it and not worry that much about the details. It seems to me that both HCI and hyperconverged infrastructure and converged infrastructure, this whole newer generation of, built to be private cloud and getting stuff similar, that feels very responsive to...
So becoming more cloud-like on-prem to some extent, yeah.
And then, what's interesting is the dynamic between the different cloud vendors. Microsoft had the strongest play to do on-prem cloud software, given their on-prem historical strength. Amazon hasn't been shipping software on-prem, so that's not, and not Google either. I think for cloud people, there's a strong bias against shipping cloud on-prem, shipping any software on-prem. Again, Anthony Lai, I've learned so much from Anthony, who's the head of our cloud business unit. When we first started talking about it, well, that's a cool thing. Maybe we could ship that on-prem. And he's just like, I don't want to ship it on-prem. I hate on-prem. The first time you ship software on-prem, your nightmares have just begun because the people you shipped it to don't run it the way your own team would do. In fact, pretty soon they want you to document it. If it's in the cloud, you don't have to document it. You just hire people. They teach each other. I mean, you have to document some stuff, but it's not like real documentation. And you certainly don't need to keep documentation of the old versions because you turn them all off because you own the cloud. And that's problem number 2. You sell it to customers and they refuse to upgrade. Like, what am I supposed to do? Break into their data center and force them? So there's just, and then they don't configure it right. There's no end of trouble. So my point is not that he's convinced the rest of us at NetApp. My point is there's very interesting cultural bias from strong cloud people that on-prem is hard and painful, and it is, and we're good at it, right? So I think that's an advantage for NetApp. It's an advantage for Microsoft, and I think it's why Microsoft was first mover on doing on-prem cloud stuff, but you now see Amazon talking about that as well and Google talking about that as well. I'm circling back around. These are directly in response to on-prem evolving in response to the benefits of cloud, right? Yeah. So yeah.
Are you seeing, so we are still on a model where the enterprise is embracing a single cloud provider, and some of them are starting to, to move applications to other service provider because, better price or better implementation of the infrastructure or whatever. So this multi-cloud is gaining some traction somewhere, but there is still the problem of moving that around because latency and stuff.
So I think, let me make a distinction between two kinds of multi-cloud, because I see something different than what you see. Most people that I talk to are interested in multiple clouds and would like to deploy on multiple clouds, but not necessarily the same apps. So let me make an analogy. You go back into when Unix and Windows, there was a real battle before, like, Windows was mostly positive client anyway, and run something in a VM. But in those early days, a lot of people wanted to be multi-vendor, and they had some Unix and they had some Windows. But that does not mean that it was a requirement for every Windows app to be able to run on Unix, or every Unix app to be able to run on Windows. And so you could argue that they weren't really multi-vendor because the vendors still kind of had a strong hold on them. But actually, if you look at how big corporate purchasing goes, often what you're fighting for is the next deal, not the current deal. And so you tell them, you screwed me on pricing, and so the next app is not going to be Windows, it's going to be Unix, right? And so I think in the same way that you've got people saying, I don't want to have just one cloud vendor, because if they start messing around with me, I think I'm going to get better pricing if I also have a different cloud vendor, right? The other thing is the different cloud vendors clearly have different superpowers, I call them, different strengths. Amazon, first to the game, clearly the most breadth of any of the cloud providers, just in terms of how many services, how many people, how much time, how many customers. That's their strength. Oh, you look at Microsoft. Microsoft's strength is just the historical long-term relationship that they have with their customers. People who've been dealing with Microsoft for 20 years who want to do a contract in the cloud will typically say, they get my purchasing department better than Amazon or Google do. Like, of course they do. They've been taking them out to lunch for 30 years, right? So, and anything involving the back office apps, if what you want is a virtualized Exchange, or now it's all 365 anyway, but that whole domain, that's a real strength of Microsoft. What I hear from people, I'm not an AI person myself, but people doing big data and AI, people who are that kind of person, something about the way Google is, and it's stuff I don't understand, but it's wired better if it's Google. And so I think there's an innate desire that people have to be on multiple ones of them. There's the realization that they have different strengths. And so people want to be in more than one, but I think they also realize it will not be the case that just any app can conveniently run on all three. Some apps maybe, but a lot of apps, no. You chose that one for a reason, and it's probably not going to run on all three or even two. How are we doing on time? We have about 5 more minutes, I think. Is that yeah. If there's any more questions.
So you see long term that cloud volume and cloud ONTAP will coexist in the cloud?
I think so. I think, the story that I told was cloud ONTAP being a release valve against us adding complexity to cloud volumes, right? There are people who literally want to extend their on-prem environment into the cloud. And God knows what feature of the stuff we've been adding for 30 years they'll want to use, right? So Cloud ONTAP makes that very easy and safe, right? That will it work? Yes, you're using it already. Fire it up and see, but yes. Whereas Cloud ONTAP, we're optimizing it, Cloud Volumes, we're optimizing it for a different market. To the extent that we add new capabilities, my hunch is it'll be more new capabilities for cloudy people. Who knows what those will turn out to be, but so I see that it's a different target market. We don't want to go add every traditional enterprise cloud feature into Cloud Volumes. So as long as there's a market for both, yeah. And I see there being a real differentiation that's real to us. We can support Cloud Volumes a hell of a lot cheaper because of all the stuff it doesn't do. And that is the cloud story, right? If you go talk to any of the cloud vendors about all the special cool stuff that you'd like to do because Oracle has it, have you yet replicated every Oracle feature? And they'll say, it's cheaper because we don't, right? So I'm a big fan of both markets. Like I said, I think a strong cloud presence will help us gain share on-prem. And I do see them as different places. The reason I put up the JSON code in the first place was just to give people a sense. It smells different. It's different. It's optimized different. we're past the era that I think of someone just taking their storage system code, throwing it into the cloud, and saying, "Oh, look, we're one too." Like that's which, no disrespect to us, that's what we did, but we did it 5 years ago now. That's a lifetime in the cloud world. So that's the big picture of what NetApp's up to. Thank you all very much.